I've been kind of hanging out in the bush most of my life, from when I was 12 up to 18, through high school, trapping, learning the bush skills. I worked exploration out of Timmins for about 7, 8 years, and then someone actually mentioned something about wild mushroom picking in the BC coast. We ended up finding this bunch of mushroom pickers in the bush. There was all these guys in the middle of the bush, from women and families, and there was up to 1,500 people in these camps. And it was like the Wild West, where they were paying you cash, and you basically ran around the bush, and if you were smart and understood the bush, you actually started making good coin picking these wild mushrooms. So we were hunting for mushrooms for about 7, 8 years here, and then once my lovely wife got pregnant with our first child, we decided that we weren't going to go wandering the hills looking for mushrooms anymore. But our prospecting career started in '96, and we lived in the old shack, and we researched for the next 6 years. You couldn't even make a dime in this business. But meantime, I ended up working with the Yukon Geological Survey, and then they had these kind of cool YMEP programs that actually gave us 10 grand to go out in the bush. How we found the first big discovery, me and my lovely wife, we jumped into our old canoe, and then we boated up the river pretty well 100 miles outside of, I thought, everybody's reach. So we were far enough out in the middle of nowhere. That's when I realized there was really nobody up here in the bush looking for the elusive source of the placer gold. And then that started leading us to first discovery in 2002, then 3 and 4, and then the rest is kind of history, because then we started making a bunch of discoveries. It was the hunting for mushrooms that gave me the confidence to go looking for the source of the placer gold. A prospector it's kind of really a state of mind. It's a hunch that when you're walking through the forest, that you want to go and bang a rock over there. And you go over there and you bang a rock because you got a hunch. The trick to this district really was about understanding the land, whether you're trapping or anything else. We had to go through a lot of nothing, a lot of taking samples with nothing in it, till eventually we started finding stuff. And then you had something to compare what nothing looked like to what something looks like. One of the aha moments hit us around 2001. We actually uncovered a new geophysical map that the government put out that actually showed an interesting anomaly. So I was able to actually map that out, and I was able to prove that we've actually had over 3 or 4 kilometers of anomaly. So that kind of led us to going, there is big mineralized systems out here, and even a poor prospector could find them. From the 1898 gold rush, they were looking for placer, but there was guys wandering up in the hills, and we could find their tools from the turn of the century, so that's really cool. But again, they were looking for rocks. And that was the key to this district, is don't look at rocks, look for soils, and then work your way in. Because if you're gonna run out and try to find a rock with gold in it, that's out. You'll never find it. And that's what happened. We had hundreds of thousands of people here, and nobody came up with the goods. I took another science, which was soils instead of rocks. The new gold rush was a combination of a few things. One, gold prices was moving up. The other one was, we've never made a discovery south of Dawson where the fabled source of the Klondike gold, 20 million ounces of placer, no known source ever seen. And the White discovery ended up being the first actual hard rock discovery that was south of Dawson. So that got people going when I made that discovery, because it was over 1 million ounces. But it was when we actually made the coffee discovery, that's what actually started driving people crazy. And they all realized they could do the same thing. So that's what launched hundreds of juniors. Well, we had over 100 juniors show up here. And that led to, it's kind of like a big food fight where everybody's running out, just staking like mad till the dust settled down. Then they got to work it eventually. But that's what's launched. We call it the Yukon's second gold rush. To start with an exploration program, you actually have to start almost years in advance. What we run is these soils. The soils is the way we understand the land first. And then once I actually understand something, then we could actually start building an exploration program around the target that we're starting to figure out. The big gold rush that happened in 1898, they all came up looking for placer gold. And placer gold is gold found in these creeks such as this. And the gold is liberated from the hard rock sources in the hills. And as it comes down the hills, it ends up in the creeks and then at the bottom of the creeks. So that's where most people came in looking for the placer. And now this wave that I came in with was hard rock. And I'm looking for the sources of the placer up in the hills above. The Dawson district never got glaciated. The soils went down deeper, and nobody actually, you're taught in university to take the top 6 inches, called the B horizon soil samples. So this, I go down at least this far down. When you're taught in university, you only go that far down. So by me going down this far, I could get a better response because the way the earth, the way the land settled, like all the minerals kind of perked its way down. So I had to sample down here to actually know if there was any gold or copper or silver versus up here. And this is what happened. Everybody before me went up here and they were looking for rocks. And that was kind of the trick to this district. But it was more than just that. You had to do it thousands of soils. How do you map out a system with confidence? First, you have to know what nothing looks like. So you have to have dead assays with nothing coming out so that when you actually walk into something, you could recognize it. And now you get the pick, now you can start to see the signature, we call it. And the idea is if you take thousands of soils, which does cost money, it actually will map out these mineralized systems for you. And that's the haystack. You don't know where the needle is in the haystack yet, but now at least you understand the edges of the system, and then you start working your way in. And the real trick to that is to find for gold, is to find the cracks, the structure that actually brought in the gold, because gold's usually coming in at a later event. When I'm doing my research, benchtop case studies as we call them, what we ended up doing was picking out these individual creek systems that actually have placer gold. And placer is the gold that's in the gravel that's free, that's been liberated from the hard rock. So I use that as a marker that there's a potential source nearby. I actually soil sample in the ridges above it. We run around with a tulip planter, it's a soil auger, but it looks like a tulip planter from Holland. And we go down about 3 feet, get a plug of dirt, and then we get that tested. That analogy to hunting is like a rock is like a bullet. If the gold is in that rock, you get a good assay. But if it's not, you miss. But a soil is like a hand grenade. So when I take a soil sample, I could tell roughly 25-meter radius if there's gold in that area. I don't know where it is yet, but now I know where to start vectoring in. So once we have the soil, we kind of go in and we do these lightweight trenching with a little small hoe that we could sling around, or we use this GT probe that goes down to the bedrock interface. And now we do that on 5-meter spacings. So we went from 50-meter soils down to sometimes 25. Now we're down to 5 meters, up to 2.5 meters with the GT probe. And so when we sample that, get that tested, and if that comes back with gold, now we're getting closer to where that gold daylights. And so then at that point, then we can come in with the rab drill. And the idea is we poke in about anywhere from 75 to 100-meter hole. We test that on 5-foot sections. And then if we see what the gold response from that is, and if that comes out nice, boom, now we're actually into the bigger diamond drill. And that's the most expensive drill. And so now we're advancing the project. So it's a step-by-step. Sometimes we throw in geophysics, and that's basically running surveys through the bush, just taking geophysical readings. And that helps us vector in defining iron, if there's iron with the ore, and things like this. So this is kind of how we kind of hone it down to eventually, if you want to hit that gold and find that gold and pick the rabbit out of the hat, you actually have to, it takes time and you have to be patient. 95% of the time there's nothing really there. Like there's anomaly, but it's not economical. So the idea is, can we kiss these frogs without damaging too much the environment? And then if it's there, well then we hone in on it. But if it's not, we can move on. My goal was to set up kind of a recon team, a rap attack, where basically we could send in a bunch of trained people, technicians, to go in from droning to doing GT probing, to basically XRFing, to soil sampling, right to probing. And now we got the target ready, and then we brought in these rab drills, and that a fraction of the cost. So our basically spin around on data collection is, it's a package deal, and that's what it's all about. I've been working with ground truth exploration since 2011. That's when it was pretty well brought in. My wife, Kathy, and Isaac Phage run that program, that side of the business.
We call the ground truth method drones to drills, and we provide a full set of exploration tools that help us in grassroots exploration. White Gold Corp is using this model to help drive their exploration success here in the Yukon and in the White Gold District. It's a methodical exploration approach where we start with high-res base mapping using drones for things like imagery and topography, LiDAR collection. When we enter in an area like the White Gold District with White Gold Corp, where they have dozens of soil anomalies that need tested, we have the method that actually is going to help them test all these targets and come up with the ones with the highest potential in the shortest amount of time.
When I showed up in '96, there was probably a few hundred claims south of Dawson, like maybe 1,000 if that, but I don't even think that much. So then I started moving around, making discoveries, or at least finding good showings. By 2010 and 11, we staked in this district, over 60,000 claims. And White Gold was actually formed in 2016. I packaged all my claims from the district into one company, figuring that there's got to be at least one more deposit out there in our portfolio so that we had a higher probability that White Gold would actually have that deposit located in its claim package. So right now we have well over 40% of the district, which is roughly around 20 to 22,000 claims. And it's basically concentrated from Dawson City all the way to the coffee project. The whole premise of White Gold is not to be a company that delineates basically ore bodies, but it's a company that finds them, gets them all tuned up, gets some of the preliminary work done. But the idea is that we don't want to strictly focus on one spot. We want to actually understand the district as a whole.